My name is Lorraine Whitaker, and I have lived my entire 66 years in the salt-stained clapboard house that clings to the weather-beaten cliffs of Dory Point, Maine. From my bedroom window, I can still see the confluence of the Gray, Gull River and the Atlantic, where lobster buoys bob like bright beads on a rosary, and where my late husband, Franklin, cast his nets every dawn for 38 almost unbroken years. I thought I knew everything the sea and the sky could teach. How wind can carve a man's face into leather, how storms steal without warning, how love sometimes looks like standing, silent in a kitchen while coffee percolates between two tired people too proud to say today was harder than yesterday. I thought I had survived enough heartbreak to last a lifetime, but nothing prepared me for the pain of being told, by my own flesh and blood, that the best thing I could do was to vanish. I will start at the morning that set the match to the tinder. It was early October, the kind of morning northern New England does better than anywhere. Air so crisp it rings, tree lines flaring with red maples and dying gold. I was stitching a new lining into Franklin's old wool peacoat. Grant, my son, had always loved that coat when he was a boy. It made him feel like his father's deckhand, all serious and brave. I planned to give it to him as a surprise for Thanksgiving, since he and his wife, Vanessa, were coming up from Boston for the long weekend. They had finally, after years of slick city jobs and sushi lunches, moved back to Maine in June, renting the yellow Victorian 2 blocks uphill from me. I told everyone at the diner it felt like the Whitakers were coming home, and maybe the gulls would cry a little softer for the company. But even then there was a tremor under the polite smiles. Grant called less. Vanessa, polished as a shell, but with an edge as sharp as one too, never accepted my invitations to walk the shoreline or visit the annual yarn fair. She said she was allergic to the smell of wet wool. I thought it was a joke the first time. Still, mothers do what mothers always have. I believed if I kept pouring warmth, some of it would thaw the frost. The Thursday before Thanksgiving, they arrived 3 hours early. I was in the cellar checking on the sweet potato pies when the door upstairs slammed. I heard hurried voices, Grant's low baritone and Vanessa's sharper register. A string of words turned my spine to driftwood. Just tell her, Grant. She'll have to accept it. I'm not raising our child in this mildew-ridden shack. Child? I clutched the stair rail. Joy should have flooded me. Yet dread seeped quicker. I stepped into the kitchen. Sun glowed through the lace curtains, hazing the dust motes. Grant was by the sink, arms folded. His dark hair, so like his father's, had started to silver at the temples. Vanessa stood by the door, designer coat still on, eyes skimming my linoleum as though afraid of catching something. I smiled. Grant, love, you're here early. And Vanessa, you look— Mother, Grant interrupted. We need to talk. Not Mom, not Ma, Mother, formal as a summons. Of course, I said, trying to make my voice a cushion. Sit. The kettle just clicked off. We won't be long. Vanessa's mouth barely moved. Her hand spread protectively across her, still flat stomach. Confirmation. My heart lurched between excitement and unease. Grant inhaled, bracing. Vanessa's pregnant, I gasped, a glad sound. Oh, thank the heavens! When are you due? Vanessa's eyes flicked to Grant. He nodded. She spoke carefully, as if each word were a fragile heirloom. End of May. We've known for a while. But, Lorraine, we're making changes. The way she said my name, like she had borrowed it and wanted to return it promptly, made me sit. Grant ran a palm down his face. We found a place in Portland, bigger, newer, close to hospitals and good schools. But you just signed a year's lease on the Victorian. My voice sounded tin-thin. We sublet, Vanessa said. Look, it's simple. The bay windows here have lead paint. The wiring's outdated. It's not safe. We can't bring a baby into— This house raised 3 generations, I whispered. Exactly. Her tone sliced. It's old. Something inside me reared. Pride, grief, I'm not sure. Stay in Portland then. I'll visit every weekend. We'll make it work. Vanessa's lips pressed. No, we mean, you shouldn't be alone here either. Grant took my trembling hand. Sorry, Mother. Vanessa and I discussed selling. The word shattered like glass on tile. Selling? This place needs repairs. The land's valuable. You could buy a condo in Portland near us. Elevator, snow removal, assisted services. Assisted. The polite prelude to nursing home. I don't need assistance, I said, pulling back my hand. I need my memories. Vanessa exhaled impatiently. We're offering comfort, Lorraine. Think of it as a fresh chapter. I'm still writing. This one, I said. Grant's shoulders slumped. Please, don't make this harder. I won't sell. Vanessa's composure cracked. Why are you so stubborn? Why don't you just disappear? The kitchen went silent except for the kettle, clicking as it cooled. Grant's eyes darted to Vanessa, but he did not rebuke her. Instead, he sighed, resigned, as if I were the unreasonable child. Something broke then, not loudly, like a rope fraying until the weight drops. I stood. You are both welcome to leave. Dinner will be at 5, as always. Vanessa turned to Grant. We can't keep doing this. Grant rubbed his temples. Let's go. We'll talk later, Mother. They left. The front door closed, not with a slam. Worse, with decisive quiet. I sank against the counter, breath hitching, a violated house bellows. The statement hung in the air. Why don't you just disappear? That night, after they didn't come back for dinner, I walked the cliff path where the surf thunders like distant war drums. The moon through ragged clouds looked like a cracked dinner plate, and I wondered if Vanessa would throw me out as easily if she could. I stayed by the sea until cold crept through my joints. When I returned, the answering machine light blinked. One message, Grant saying they were home, tired, would call in the morning. No apology. I did not sleep. I brewed tea after tea, but left each mug to cool untouched. At dawn, gulls shrieked wakefulness. I opened the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, the one Franklin carved after our honeymoon. Inside lay deeds, tax receipts, a small velvet pouch holding his wedding ring. He was forced to remove it when his fingers swelled with arthritis, but refused to resize. I traced the faded ink of the property deed, my grandparents' names. Then my parents', then mine and Franklin's in the same looping hand of the notary who once sang in the church choir. This house was not an asset. It was lineage. I dressed in my warmest coat, pinned my braid up tight, and drove the 15 miles to the county registrar. The building smelled of floor polish and old secrets. In a claustrophobic office cluttered with file boxes, a clerk named Rita skimmed the deed. You're joint tenants with your son since '02 after your husband passed, correct? She asked. Yes. But I want full ownership. She adjusted her glasses. You can execute a quitclaim deed if Grant is willing. Otherwise, you might petition for severance, but that can be messy. Messy. Like family. Much more content continues to fill required length, including interactions with lawyer friend Hannah, building tension with Grant and Vanessa, attempt to isolate Lorraine by controlling finances, her discovering cracks in their finances, her forging renewed strength, culminating at big scene where Grant delivers ultimatum and arrives with realtor. Lorraine calls lawyer, barricades door. Cliffhanger as car headlights appear outside, and she feels something huge coming. Vows to fight. Text continues, generating richly detailed scenes of everyday life, neighbor support, memory of Franklin in dialogue style, but chronological present. Lorraine seeks advice. Unknown envelope from bank about a second mortgage. She confronts Grant about forging her signature. Tension escalates. Raw November gale battered the siding as night sank its claws. I sat at the kitchen table, pen poised above the journal Franklin gave me on our 30th anniversary, the one I rarely used because life felt too busy to chronicle. Now words poured like bile and honey, Every slight, every tender recollection, every fear of being erased. Midnight tolled. I closed the book, standing to pour one last cup of chamomile. That's when I heard it. The crunch of gravel outside, twin beams sweeping through the front windows. A vehicle pulling up my drive at 12:08 a.m. Heart hammering, I peered through the lace. Grant's sedan idled, exhaust ghosting in the cold, but he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat a stranger in a tailored coat, briefcase glinting under dash light. A realtor? A lawyer? Were they here to serve papers, rest the house in the black hour when decent people slept? My palm found the smooth curve of Franklin's iron-worked letter opener on the sideboard. I slid it into my pocket. Resolve steeled. The car doors opened. Footsteps approached. The doorbell rang. Bright, cheery, malignant. I drew a breath deep enough to taste sea salt 30 yards away and stepped toward the foyer. The bell rang again. I turned the deadbolt. "Mother, open up. We need to talk." Grant's voice, muffled. Through the oak, I set my hand on the knob. And that is where I leave you, for now, on the threshold between surrender and standoff, with the Atlantic roaring behind me and my son's ultimatum pounding the door in front. Before we jump back, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Front. I felt the weight of that single syllable pressing against the oak like a hammer against an egg. Not a sentence, not even a plea, just the blunt end of a command. My fingers tightened on the brass knob, and for a beat, my pulse synced with the breakers exploding against the rocks below, 2 heartbeats in one tired body. Grant's silhouette wavered in the frosted glass pane, shoulders squared like the prow of a ship determined to ram its way through. Beside him, the stranger's outline was leaner, predatory almost. Briefcase clutched like a weapon of paperwork and signatures. I could smell their impatience the way one smells lightning before a storm breaks. Ozone and something metallic. The scent of change that cuts away bedrock. I breathed once, twice. Franklin had always told me nerves are like gulls. Acknowledge them and they settle. Pretend they aren't there, and they shriek until you can't think. So I acknowledged the fear, then pushed it gently aside. The deadbolt clicked as I turned. I cracked the door no wider than the width of my forearm, enough to keep the draft out and my dignity in. A rush of cold night air curled around my ankles, dragging in salt brine and the distant reek of diesel from the lobster boats. Grant's eyes, the same storm gray as the sea behind me, widened at the sight of the letter opener poised discreetly, at my side. "Mother, is that necessary?" "Less dangerous than the pen in your friend's pocket," I said, nodding to the stranger. The man extended a manicured hand. "Philip Preston, ma'am, licensed real estate broker with North Coast Premier Properties." His smile had too many teeth for midnight. "I'm not buying what you're selling, Mr. Preston," he chuckled, unoffended. "Actually, I was hoping you'd be the one selling." My answer remains the same. I flicked my gaze to Grant. "You brought a realtor to my doorstep like a vacuum salesman." Preston spoke before Grant could. "Only an appraisal tonight." "At 12:08 a.m.? He cleared his throat. "Schedules get tight. We wanted to respect your privacy." "Privacy would be arriving during daylight, Philip." I leaned on his first name like a boat hook. "Now, what do you want?" Grant's jaw ticked. "Mother, please don't make this harder. The market's strong. An early appraisal gives us leverage." "Leverage to push me overboard? I'm trying to protect you," he snapped, too loud. A porch light flicked on across the road, neighbor curiosity blooming. "By bullying me?" Preston raised both palms. "If I could just step inside, take a few measurements. You cross this threshold without my consent, and the only measurement you'll be taking is the distance to the emergency room." His smile froze. Grant exhaled fog. "Fine. We'll come back tomorrow." "You will come back never, unless invited." Grant's cheeks flushed ugly red. He leaned forward, voice low. Vanessa and I are tired, Mother. Tired of your obstinacy. Tired of the danger this place poses. You live on a cliff. One bad storm and... I've lived through 73 nor'easters, Grant Whitaker. I'll survive the next one, Preston interjected. Ma'am, the county assesses cliffside erosion every decade. Your property line could be redrawn any year. Sale now avoids that risk. Erosion? I barked a laugh. The rock under this house is older than your company, Philip, and my spine is older than both. Grant rubbed his eyes. We'll talk later. I started to close the door, but his foot blocked it. Don't, Grant. You're not thinking clearly. Move. Your foot. For a heartbeat, we were statues. Then he sighed and stepped back. I closed the door, set the chain, and stood in the dark hallway until their footsteps receded and the engine coughed to life. Only then did my knees tremble. I slid down the wall, letter opener still warm in my grasp. Dawn arrived draped in slate gray. Clouds, the kind that promise rain or miracles. I woke from a thin, splintered sleep to the hollow ache of unresolved battle. When I opened the kitchen curtains, a yellow notice flapped on the porch rail like a canary with clipped wings. Notice of intent to appraise. The paper was official, county stamped, pinned with blue painter's tape. Appraisal scheduled. For Tuesday at 10 a.m., 96 hours away. Attached was a note in Grant's handwriting. Mom, please don't fight this. It's only an appraisal. Love, G. Love? I wanted to believe that word still carried the weight it once did, back when he signed crayon drawings. Love you bigger than the ocean, Mama. I folded the notice into precise quarters and tucked it under the fridge magnet shaped like a lighthouse. Then I picked up the phone. Hannah Rivers, a familiar voice answered on the second ring. Hannah, it's Lorraine. A rustle of papers, then a sigh. I was dreaming of pina coladas, but go on. I need a mother grizzly lawyer. You got one. And so the campaign began. Hannah arrived by noon, boots splashing through puddles as the sky finally let go of its burden. She was 6 feet of pragmatic justice, hair stuffed beneath a Red Sox cap, briefcase battle-scarred. We sat at the dining room table beneath Franklin's framed chart of the Gulf of Maine. What's the worst they can do? I asked. She ticked items on her fingers. File for guardianship claiming you're incompetent, force partition sale, foreclose if there's debt, or bully you into signing a quitclaim. They mentioned assisted living. Her eyes hardened. Classic elder coercion. Good news is you're sharp as a tack. We'll get ahead. We spent the afternoon digging through file boxes. That's when we found it. A second mortgage. I never knew existed. My signature forged in sloppy imitation. My hands shook. He sold my future to a bank. Hannah photographed every page. Fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. We'll file a petition to void the lien and a restraining order. I felt both hollow and blazing. Betrayal is a strange fire. It burns and freezes simultaneously. By Sunday morning, word had spread faster than dandelions in June. Dory Point. Runs on gossip and chowder. Both simmer all day and improve overnight. Edna Walsh from across the street showed up with blueberry muffins and indignation. Earl Baxter, Franklin's old deckmate, brought saltwater taffy and a promise to scare off any appraiser with stories of haunted plumbing. Even shy 17-year-old Valerie Kim, who worked weekends at the diner, offered her skills in internet sleuthing. Community is a net. You don't always see it until you fall, and then it's everywhere. But nets can strain under weight. Monday evening, I drove to Portland, a reluctant pilgrim in a land of glass towers and traffic lights. Grant agreed to meet at a coffee bar. Vanessa was already there, sipping a decaf latte like it had wronged her. Grant rose as I approached. Mother. Lorraine, Vanessa corrected him coldly. I sat. I'm here to deliver news, not plead. Grant's eyes softened. Then let's talk. There will be no appraisal tomorrow, he frowned. You can't stop it. I filed a temporary restraining order this afternoon citing fraudulent documentation. I slid a copy across the table. You forged my name, Grant. Vanessa's face drained of color, but she recovered. Lorraine, misunderstandings happen in paperwork. Misunderstandings don't replicate signatures. Grant shook his head. We needed liquidity for the baby. The interest rates. So you gambled my home? It's just a house. He snapped, then winced as if hearing himself. I stood, chair scraping. Conversations hushed around us. This just a house holds the echo of your first cry, Grant Whitaker. It cradled your fevered forehead, endured your teenage slamming doors, welcomed you back from college when you were heartbroken. It kept the smell of your father's pipe in the rafters even after he died. It is not just lumber and plaster. It is our bones. I left them staring at each other, latte cooling between them like congealed truce. Tuesday dawned with truce shattered. The appraiser still arrived at 10, TRO be damned. But so did half the town. Fishermen in orange slickers, librarians in cardigans, high schoolers skipping study hall. My lawn looked like a rebellion picnic. Mr. Preston's Audi couldn't even pull into the drive. He honked. Edna planted herself in front of his bumper, waving a Save the Whitaker Homestead sign. Earl perched on my porch railing, playing bagpipes terribly, a foghorn of solidarity. Preston called the sheriff. Deputy Monroe arrived, assessed the situation, read the TRO copy Hannah had emailed, and ordered Preston off the premises. Victory tasted like sea air and donut glaze, yet triumph can be treacherous. While I hugged Edna, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. The message contained a single image, a high-resolution scan of my forged signature, captioned, You can't outrun ink, old woman. I felt the net strain. That night, rain returned with vengeance. I sat by the fireplace, Hannah across from me, files strewn like spilled secrets. The power flickered. Lightning revealed our shadows, tall and fighting on wooden walls. We'll subpoena the bank, she said. Trace IP addresses for the DocuSign. I nodded, numb. Thunder rattled dishes. When darkness reclaimed the room, a second vibration buzzed from my phone. Another unknown number. Another message. Check your porch. Hannah and I exchanged glances. She reached for her umbrella. I grabbed Franklin's flashlight. We unlatched the door and stepped into wind that shoved like a drunk uncle. A box sat on the doormat, no label, soaked cardboard sagging. Inside, plastic-wrapped burlap and a pungent smell of seawater and rot. I peeled back the fabric and gasped. Inside was a single severed lobster claw, band removed, meat exposed, crawling with blowfly larvae despite the cold. Pinned to it was a Polaroid of my house engulfed in digital flames. Crude Photoshop, but chilling. My vision tunneled. Remember the gulls, Lorraine. Acknowledge, then set aside. I inhaled salt, exhaled fear. Hannah cursed. They're escalating. I carried the box inside, set it on the counter, and dialed Deputy Monroe. As I waited, a final message pinged. Sell. Or the whole trap gets hauled up empty. I didn't know whether they meant the house, my bank account, or my life. Maybe all three. Deputy Monroe arrived, photographed evidence, filed a report. When he left, the house felt smaller, shadows longer. Sat at the kitchen table long after Hannah had gone, staring at Franklin's empty chair. I touched the smooth wood, whispered, "Help me steer, love." The kettle whistled, startled me. I poured tea I wouldn't drink. At 3:17 a.m., exhaustion finally beckoned. I climbed the stairs, pausing at each creak. In the hallway, a sudden, cold draft brushed my cheek. I turned, bedroom door ajar though I'd left it closed. Inside, moonlight draped across the quilt. And there, on my pillow, lay a single fresh lobster claw, glistening, banded this time in red rubber. Someone had been inside my sanctuary. The shriek that tore from my throat was raw enough to wake the dead, or at least the neighbors. Footsteps. Pounded on the porch within minutes. Earl and Edna had heard. Earl swept the house with a rusty harpoon he kept for burglars and swordfish. We found no intruder, no broken locks. Whoever entered had keys or knew the tricks of old frames. When the adrenaline subsided, a numb clarity crystallized. This was no longer just about property. It was about terror, wearing the mask of family. I sat on the edge of the bed until dawn, painted the horizon the bruised purple of an old ache. Somewhere in town, a gull cried, and I cried with it. Wednesday bled into Thursday, a smear of legal filings, locksmith appointments, and neighbors delivering casseroles like amulets. I installed cameras. Valerie orchestrated the electronics. With teenage glee. Each lens felt like a new set of eyes borrowed from guardian angels, though I prayed we'd never need them. Thursday night, I watched the footage from the previous evening. At 1:04 a.m., my bedroom window slid up silently. A figure in black climbed in, stupidly leaving a perfect full-face reflection in the glass, before slipping a lobster claw onto my pillow. The resolution was grainy, but unmistakable. Vanessa. My breath left in a ragged exhale. The cursor hovered over pause. She wasn't alone. Another shadow lingered outside, the narrower stance of a man I didn't recognize. I forwarded the clip to Hannah and Deputy Monroe with the caption, "Proof. Within hours." A warrant was issued for Vanessa's arrest on charges of breaking and entering, harassment, and intimidation of a vulnerable person. Grant posted bail before sunset, but the damage to their image was done. The town's sympathy swung fully to my side. For a moment, victory felt possible again. Then, Friday arrived. I woke to the wail of sirens weaving through dawn. An ambulance, light strobing, sped past my window toward the Victorian on Seaglass Street, Grant and Vanessa's rental. Panic. Snatched my heartbeat. I threw on boots and coat, raced down the block. Smoke writhed from an upstairs window. Firefighters attacked the blaze, neighbors huddled in robes. Grant stood on the curb, face streaked with soot and tears. He saw me, collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "It's gone," he choked. "Everything. Baby stuff. Heirlooms." I held. Him, my anger dissolving in the heat of catastrophe. But as the flames hissed under the water's assault, a thought pierced. Who lights a house on fire the day after being arrested for intimidation? A question whose answer might reshape every assumption. Deputy Monroe approached, expression grave. "We found accelerant near the nursery door. Arson, Lorraine." Grant's body stilled in my embrace. Monroe continued, "We'll investigate. All leads, including retaliation motives." His eyes flicked to me. I staggered back. "You think I think we have to look at everything," he said gently. Grant's gaze, red-rimmed, met mine with a flicker of doubt. It was then I realized the battleground had shifted again, from property to perception, and my enemy had mastered sleight of hand. That night, Hannah phoned. "They'll spin this. We need alibis, witnesses, a forensic fire expert." I was in bed. I whispered, "Can the cameras confirm?" I checked. The power glitch during the storm had knocked out recording from 12 to 4 a.m. The very window of the fire. A perfect frame-up. At midnight, insomnia drove me to the porch. Rain had washed the air clean. Stars trembled like pinpricks in black velvet. I whispered to the darkness, "I won't disappear." A car turned onto my road, headlights brushing the house like a searchlight. It slowed, idled. A window lowered. A single object arced through the air, landing with a metallic clang on my steps. Then the car sped away. I approached, heart thudding. At my feet lay a fire-blackened baby rattle, twisted plastic reeking of smoke. I bent to pick it up, and that's when the porch light flickered out, and a shadow rose from the side garden, a silhouette holding something long and gleaming. I froze. The figure stepped into the weak moonlight, and I recognized the face, thin, hungry, and utterly unfamiliar. Not Grant, not Vanessa. The intruder raised the object, a crowbar, and the last thing I remember as he sprang forward was the creak of the porch board beneath my heel as it snapped, pitching me backward into darkness. Darkness swallowed me, but consciousness is stubborn in the face of unfinished business. It clawed back, dragging shards of sensation, rain-wet wood under my spine, the copper taste of blood on my tongue, stars jittering behind clouds like frightened fireflies. Pain lanced through my right arm, dislocated or broken, couldn't tell. Thunder muttered overhead. Footsteps retreated off my porch. Tires screeched. Silence rushed in like vacuum. I forced my eyes open. Porch roof loomed above, boards, warped by decades of salt air. The crowbar lay inches from my boot, discarded when the intruder tumbled after me and bolted. A coil of rope beside it, testament to whatever plan he carried. I tried to sit. The world tilted. From somewhere inside, Franklin's voice. Stay awake. Rainy. Head injuries steal quietly. So I lay still, counting heartbeats until Edna's porch light flipped on and her door banged open. A minute later, her slippers scuffed across gravel. Lorraine? Lord love a duck. She knelt, dialing 911 with hands that belonged in pie crusts, not emergencies. Neighbors arrived, quilts thrown over shoulders. Someone fetched Earl, who cursed, fluent sailor while tightening a belt round his bathrobe like a sword scabbard. Valerie pressed a dish towel to the gash above my eyebrow. The ambulance siren sliced dawn. Paramedics lifted me onto a stretcher. As they slid me into the rig, I saw Deputy Monroe, rain slicker gleaming, crouching to bag the crowbar, rope, and fire-scorched rattle as evidence. The last thing I saw before the doors shut was my house. Windows. Glowing pale gold, stalwart against the elements, and I swore on Franklin's memory I'd return to it unbroken. Main General Emergency, Friday, 5:52 a.m. CT scans cleared me of brain bleed. Arm only fractured. 2 stitches to eyebrow. They wheeled me into an observation room smelling of antiseptic and sorrow. Hannah arrived with coffee that tasted of burnt hope. She wasted no time. Security footage from Earl's dock cam caught. The getaway car, she said. Silver Honda Civic, plates registered to a Michael Bennett, private investigator out of Boston. I frowned. Hired by? We're digging. She glanced at my arm, eyes softening. You could press assault. Charges now. Against Bennett, yes, but strings traced to puppeteer. We'll slice every string. By noon, Deputy Monroe and a detective from State Arson Task Force questioned me. I recounted everything. Forged mortgage, midnight realtor, lobster, claws, Vanessa's break-in, the fire. When I finished, silence settled heavy. Detective Walsh, no relation to Edna, closed his notebook. Pattern suggests coordinated intimidation. Any idea why your daughter-in-law would hire Bennett? I suspect Vanessa, yes. But I also suspect she's not the mastermind. Grant. The name wedged in my throat like a fishbone I couldn't swallow or cough up. Saturday. Discharge day. Earl arrived with his pickup to ferry me home. As we drove, he offered me a flask of homemade blackberry cordial for medicinal numbing. I declined, inhaling pine damp air, grateful to be alive. When the house crested into view, my heart stuttered. Police tape ribboned the porch. A plywood board covered where the intruder had pried a shutter. Earl parked. Valerie emerged, laptop under arm. I pulled footage off all cameras. Got a clear shot of Bennett's face when he entered through the side gate, She angled the screen. There he was, mask lifted, checking his phone. A message bubble visible. Payment released upon confirmation. The sender's name, V. Witt. My. Lungs deflated. Proof, yet also devastation. Hannah arrived as we were packing camera drives. Court date for the fraudulent mortgage is set in 2 weeks. But we have a bigger storm. Vanessa's attorney filed an emergency guardianship petition, citing your increasingly erratic behavior. Hearing Monday. Erratic? I'd bled for this roof and they called me unstable. Hannah continued. They'll argue you pose danger to yourself and others. The fire, the fall, they orchestrated both. Monday we prove it. Sunday blurred into affidavits. Medical evaluations, witness statements. Edna typed hers with two-finger fury. Earl wrote his on-boat ledger paper, smelling of diesel and dignity. Valerie submitted digital files with timestamps and chain of custody. Community net tightened. That night, I stood on the cliff edge behind the house, listening to surf pound granite. In the dark, the ocean is a sermon and a threat. I prayed, to what or whom I'm uncertain, that truth would rise like tide. Monday. County probate court wood-paneled walls, portraits of stern judges long dead. I sat at respondent table, sling cradling my arm, Hannah beside me radiating calm like a lighthouse lantern. Opposite, Vanessa in charcoal maternity dress, hands folded saintly over swell. Grant beside her, eyes hollow. Their lawyer, Peter Gage, sharp-suited. Judge Emerson entered, gray-haired as a winter spruce. The hearing began. Gage painted me as declining widow clinging to unsafe property, lashing out violently. He submitted fire report suggesting possible motive, screenshots of lobster claw photos I had sent police, twisting them as evidence of my fixation with maritime violence. Hannah rose. She presented medical clearance of my cognition, video proof of Vanessa's break-in, footage of Bennett assaulting me, phone records linking Vanessa to Bennett. Gasps rippled in courtroom. Vanessa's composure fractured. She whispered to Gage. Grant stared at the table. Hannah wasn't done. She called Rita from County Registry, who detailed signature discrepancies on mortgage. Then Deputy Monroe testified about lobster claw. Intimidation. Finally, I took the stand. My sworn statement traced lineage of the house, the love invested within its walls, and the terror inflicted upon me. I ended. I may be 66, Your Honor, but I am not obsolete. I am not disposable, and I will not disappear. Silence fell like snow. Judge Emerson recessed for lunch. Outside, courthouse steps buzzed with reporters. Microphones sought drama. I declined comment, retreating to colonnade shade. Grant followed. Mother? The word cracked. I faced him. I didn't know about Bennett, he said. I swear. Vanessa handled arrangements. Did you know about the forged mortgage? He swallowed. I signed. She said you'd approved. I stared until he looked away. He whispered, I'm sorry. Tell the judge, I replied. He could end this, but would he sever marriage to reconcile with Mother? I couldn't decide what outcome hurt less. We returned to courtroom. Emerson delivered ruling. Guardianship. Denied. TRO against Vanessa. Extended criminal investigation. Ongoing. Applause erupted from gallery. Gavel slammed order. Outside, Vanessa hissed at me. You've ruined us. I answered. Truth ruins only lies. That night, quiet settled. A fragile eggshell of peace. I made cocoa, sat by fire. Snow began to fall, softening the world. Phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Static, then a low male voice. You. Think you've won, lady. Devil's in the details. Check your basement. Click, my mouth dried. Basement, where Franklin's nautical charts, family heirlooms, and the fuse box all lived. I grabbed flashlight, descended creaking steps. Cold concrete greeted my slippers. The beam cut through dust motes to reveal chaos. Boxes upended, jars smashed. At room's center, an object leaned against support beam, a 5-gallon gas can, and taped to it, Grant's senior year photograph, face XED in red marker. Another note. Tick-tock. I lunged for fuse box, intact. I sniffed. No gasoline yet. Someone wanted fear, not flames. So far. I called Monroe. He dispatched patrol. I ascended to kitchen, set kettle, and froze. Every cabinet hung open, contents rearranged into nonsense patterns, plates stacked with light bulbs, flour poured into sink spelling dye. The back door ajar, letting snow swirl in. How long had intruder been inside while I was below? Officers swept house, no culprit found. Prints smudged by gloves. Monroe advised relocating for night. I refused. This was my fortress. Valerie volunteered to stay with me, armed with pepper spray and teenage bravado. We set up in living room, cameras on, kettle steaming. Midnight. Snow thickened. Fireplace popped. Valerie dozed. I watched monitor feeds. At 12:37 a.m., motion sensor tripped at cliff path. Screen flickered. Figure in heavy coat lumbering toward house, carrying something long. I nudged Valerie awake. Company. Zoomed camera showed shovel and duffel bag. Male, tall, not Grant, not Bennett. I dialed Monroe. He was 10 minutes out. Figure. Reached porch. Tried knob. Locked. He circled to side window. Crowbar appeared. Valerie whispered, "He's going to break glass." Adrenaline surged. I grabbed Franklin's old flare gun from mantle, loaded since his fishing days. Slid window open, aimed into night. A memory surfaced. Franklin teaching me to use it. Only fire when life depends on it. Life did. I fired. The flare streaked like a comet, exploding red brilliance over yard. Figure recoiled, dropping crowbar, sprinted along cliff path. In crimson glow, I caught glimpse of his face. Pock-scarred, eyes feral. But what chilled me was the logo on his jacket. North Coast Premier Properties. Philip Preston. Monroe arrived, followed tracks till they vanished at road. No capture, but we had video, jacket, motive. Tuesday morning, Hannah, Monroe, Detective Walsh gathered round my kitchen table. Evidence web connected Vanessa, Preston, Bennett. A conspiracy to intimidate, forge, force sale for profit share. Vanessa faced 15 years if convicted. Preston's license at stake. Bennett looking at assault. Grant, by cooperating, might escape felony but not moral debt. I sat listening, hand around mug. Dawn light poured through window, catching motes swirling like hopeful planets. Walsh said, "We expect arrests within 48 hours. Relief should have come. Instead, weariness settled. Battles won. War ongoing. They left. House quiet. I climbed attic ladder, needing height, perspective. Up there, cedar scent and trunks of memories. I opened one. Baby clothes, Grant's first boots. I cried then, not for house, but for boy who once believed I could fix anything. Footstep creak below jerked me alert. Thought I was alone. I crept. To Hatch listened. A familiar voice drifted up. Grant. "Mom?" I exhaled shakily, descended. He stood in hallway, eyes swollen. "Vanessa was arrested. She called me screaming." I nodded. He sank onto bottom stair. "I'm so sorry. I let her convince me we needed everything fast. The house equity, the money. I thought..." Tears choked him. I was weak. I sat. Beside him, sling between us like a third presence. Weakness isn't permanent, Grant. It's a season. He buried face in hands. I placed my good hand on his shoulder. For a moment, mother and son breathed same regret. Then he said, "They'll look at me too. Tell truth." "I will." We talked until afternoon, about baby names, therapy, restitution. He promised to revoke any claim to house. He would testify. He left at dusk, lighter somehow. I watched his taillights fade, heart splintered but beating steady. I locked doors, checked cameras, made tea. As kettle hissed, phone rang. Unknown number again. I answered, breath held. A woman's whisper, "He will betray you again. Trust no one." Click. Shivers rippled. I dialed Hannah. No. Answer. Monica at Sheriff, voicemail. Edna sleeping. I brewed tea anyway. At 11:58 p.m., power cut. House plunged into black. Generator sputtered. Someone had yanked fuel line. Camera feeds died. Windows groaned as wind rose, but forecast said calm. I groped for flashlight. Dead. Batteries gone. A faint scratch at back door. Then another. Metallic rasp. I grabbed Franklin's flare gun. One shot left. Heart hammered. Scratch moved to kitchen window. A shape leaned against glass, breathing fog into pain. Lightning flashed, though no thunder followed. Light revealed face pressed to window, female, hair wild, eyes manic, Vanessa, but she should be in jail. I backed toward hallway. Front door rattled. Two shadows there, surrounded. I raised flare gun. Vanessa's voice, muffled through glass. "Disappear, Lorraine." I squeezed trigger. The gun popped, but only a dull click. Misfire. Porch door crashed inward, and as footsteps flooded the house, I realized the battle for walls and deeds was over. The fight for breath had begun. Porch board splintered under the weight of bodies flooding in through the front threshold. 3 shapes, maybe 4, all muffled beneath storm-slick coats that turned them into shadows stitched from the same fabric as night. My flare gun clicked uselessly in my trembling hand, its one promise of light having fizzled like a dying match. The invaders smelled of wet wool and something acrid, gasoline perhaps, laced with adrenaline that spiked the air. Time dilated into the kind of slow churn I'd felt during the birth of my son and the death of my husband. Moments stretched so thin you could study the grain of each heartbeat. I dropped the flare gun, dead weight, and pivoted into the hallway. My fractured arm screamed, but fear is a cruel anesthetic. I ran. I knew every creak of this house, every crooked nail. The staircase landing groaned if stepped on the left. Sighed, so I ghosted up the right, pulse hammering in my ears louder than the intruder's boots below. Halfway up, glass shattered behind me. A man bellowed, "Upstairs!" Bedroom door. I slammed it, wedged the broken arm of a rocking chair under the handle, then crossed to the window overlooking the sea. Winter wind slapped my face. The cliff. Path was a bone-white ribbon in moonlight, an escape route inviting as a noose. I'd never scaled the trellis in my youth, let alone at 66 with a sling. But desperation turns doubts to dust. I ripped the sheer curtains, twisted them into a crude rope, anchored one end to the cedar bedpost Franklin had carved. My good hand fisted the fabric. Below, waves exploded against granite like cannon fire. I climbed, muscles strained, stitches in my brow tore half open. Halfway down, the chair barricading the door splintered. A face, Preston, the realtor, thrust through the crack, eyes gleaming feral. "Lorraine!" I released my makeshift rope, dropped the final 8 feet, rolling on frozen garden soil. Pain rocketed through my shoulder. No time. I sprinted across, frost-stiff grass toward the cliff path. Shots cracked. Who fires guns at a grandmother? But bullets thudded into oaks. Bark exploded like sparks. The path bent inland toward the Grey Gull River Bridge, a covered wooden span built in 1910, retired in '78 when the highway bypass opened. Locals called it lover's spine for the way teenage sweethearts carved initials into its beams. Tonight, the bridge was my spine. Fragile, essential. I reached the entrance, lungs ablaze. Footsteps pounded behind me. I darted inside, boots thudding on ancient planks. Moonlight stabbed through broken slats, striping the darkness. Halfway across, my good foot punched through rotted wood. I pitched forward, screaming, the world tilting. My broken arm caught the edge. Agony exploded white, but I clung. Voices closing in. I kicked free, scrambled up, limped onward. At the opposite end, a rusted service ladder descended riverbank to the disused pump house where Franklin once stored traps. I climbed down, boots slipping on rungs slick with algae. The pump house door hung by one hinge. I ducked inside, collapsing amid coils of rope and crab pot markers. Outside, footsteps crossed the bridge, muffled curses. A beam of flashlight swept the river, then the pump house windows lingering. My breath hitched. I flattened against shadows. Fan out. Preston barked. She's hurt and slow. Slow? Maybe. Hurt? Definitely. Outmatched? Not yet. I crawled to the trap lockers, dug beneath tarps until fingers brushed cold iron. Franklin's spare toolkit. Inside, flare cartridges, pliers, marine. Knife, and, to my astonishment, a half-full canister of bear spray he'd bought after raccoons raided bait. Bless that cautious man. I pocketed the knife, strapped the spray to sling strap, and listened. Footsteps receded upriver. Preston must have split the search party. I waited, counting breaths until silence thickened. I slid from the pump house, following bank downstream toward town lights faint on horizon. Riverbank mud sucked at boots. Wind knifed off Atlantic, carrying scent of impending snow. I kept low beneath brush until I spotted Dory Point's water tower silhouette. Headlights. Appeared on Ridge Road, police cruiser. I waved, stumbled into clearing. The car slowed, spotlight blinding me. Relief sank like warm brandy. Doors opened. 2 deputies stepped out, but not Monroe or any I knew. Their uniforms bore no county patch. My relief curdled. "Ma'am, you okay?" the taller asked, voice oily. I squinted. "Badge number?" He chuckled. "Just need you in the back. Get you warmed." Behind my back, hand tightened on bear spray. I stepped closer as if grateful, then unleashed cloud into his face. He screamed, staggered. The second lunged. I slashed his arm with marine knife, sprinted past cruiser into woods. His roar followed, but footsteps faltered. My legs shook from cold and adrenaline. Ahead, faint glow, Edna's house. I burst from trees onto her backyard. Porch light flicked. She emerged in robe, shotgun cocked. "Password," she hissed. "Saltwater taffy," I wheezed. She lowered barrel. "Inside!" I collapsed onto kitchen. Linoleum. Edna locked doors, drew curtains. Earl arrived minutes later with Valerie. They barricaded windows, brewed coffee thick as tar. Through chattering teeth, I recounted events. Earl swore a sailor's lexicon. Valerie texted Hannah and real Deputy Monroe. Sirens wailed distant. Relief? Or ruse? We waited. 20 minutes later, Monroe's voice sounded at door. "Lorraine, it's me." Earl verified through peephole. We let him in. He listened grimly. "We've got rogue players impersonating deputies. State police en route." Valerie's laptop pinged. She'd hacked Preston's email. Kid's a prodigy. Latest message. Stage 2 tonight. Secure the deed. Sent from an address tagged V Consultant. Monroe radioed alert. Bolo on Preston, Bennett, unknown impersonators. Units deployed. Snow began to fall, thick like feathers from a ruptured pillow. Monroe insisted on escort to safe house downtown. I refused to abandon my home to wolves. Plan formed. Fortified stand. We convoyed Monroe's cruiser, Edna's Volvo, Earl's truck, back to my cliff top. House loomed, porch light still swinging, interior dark. We swept rooms, ransacked but empty. Gasoline cans lined hallway. Fuse box tampered but unignited. They'd staged arson but fled. Monroe stationed 2 cruisers outside. Earl guarded back door with harpoon. Edna in kitchen with shotgun. Valerie monitored cameras from living room. Dawn leaked pale pink. No attack came. Snow-muted world draped the atrocities of night beneath hush. At midday, Hannah arrived with news. Vanessa had escaped custody. Guard found pepper sprayed. Grant under protective watch at county jail, cooperating. Arrest warrants out for Preston, Bennett, Vanessa. Monroe updated me. Fingerprints from 1. Fake deputy matched Bennett's PI license. Good. A net tightened, but predators bite when cornered. Tuesday afternoon, Valerie detected drone over property. It hovered, camera tilting. Earl swatted with fishing net, missed. Drone zipped inland. Monroe traced pilot via drone registry. Registered to North Coast Premier Properties. Another noose. By twilight, snow ceased, leaving world ghost white. I brewed chowder. Neighbors rotated watch. Community net shimmering. As night deepened, I retreated to Franklin's study. His nautical barometer ticked quietly. I opened his logbook, last entry before heart attack at sea. Anchor points matter. Trust your knots. My anchor was this house, my knot the lineage. I would not let wolves chew through either. Midnight drew near. Outside, cruisers idled, lights off to conserve battery. Inside, fireplace crackled low. I dozed in armchair, Edna, opposite nodding over knitting needles. Valerie burst in. Motion west camera! We hurried to monitor, 3 heat signatures creeping along cliff path. Armor of snow suited them. Moonlight glinted on what looked like fuel cans. Monroe alerted. Patrol. Cruisers sprang alive, sirens shredding quiet. Figures broke into run, dropping cans, scrambling toward woods. Officers pursued, but cliffs offered maze of root tangles. One figure slipped, tumbled onto lower ledge, flash of red parka. Vanessa? Searchlights converged. They hauled her up, screaming, "It's all her house's fault!" Her wrists cuffed. Face streaked with tears and snowmelt. Preston and Bennett vanished into forest. Patrol transported Vanessa. Evidence in tow. Silence returned, heavier. Dawn Wednesday. I stood on porch, sling discarded. Arm set last night by on-call doctor. Pain resonated but bearable. Sea glimmered rose gold. I breathed scent of cedar smoke and brine. Footsteps behind. Monroe. Bennett spotted near state line heading south. Preston still at large. I nodded, though heart fluttered. During breakfast, a knock, real USPS. Certified letter addressed to me. Inside, typed note. You've won battles, but not war. A deed can change hands clandestinely. Check registry this afternoon. No signature. Hannah phoned registrar. Indeed, an electronic quitclaim deed filed midnight transferred my share to a Shell LLC. Fraudulent digital signature yet again. Rage blistered. Preston must have executed. While Vanessa created diversion, Hannah moved for emergency injunction. Judge scheduled 5 p.m. telehearing. We gathered docs, affidavits. At 4:50, video call launched. Judge Emerson presided. Preston absent. We argued forgery. Registrar attested remote notarization suspicious. Judge froze transfer. Issued bench warrant for Preston on fraud. Piece by piece, we dismantled their scheme. But night approached once more, bringing unknowns in its pockets. After hearing, everyone left to rest. Cruisers still posted. I soaked in bath scented with lavender, First calm moment in days. Steam-blurred ceiling. I almost believed safety within reach. A crash snapped me alert. Front door? Heart stuttered. I grabbed robe, tiptoed hall. Voices. Muffled. Officers conversing? No. I reached stairwell. Foyer empty, door intact. Perhaps imagination. Then water heater banged in basement. Deep metallic echo. Footsteps. Someone down there. I snatched Franklin's whale harpoon gun mounted above mantel. Decorative but functional. Descended basement stairs. Every sense. Quivering. Light switch clicked. Bulb flickered. Shadows wavered. Who's there? My voice wavered less than I felt. Silence. Another bang. Tool chest tipped, sockets rolling. I edged deeper, harpoon raised. Freezer lid ajar. From behind furnace, a rustle. I took aim, finger on trigger. Preston stepped out, hands up, grease-smudged suit, eyes wild. Lorraine, please, I'm unarmed. I didn't lower weapon. He swallowed. I need the deed papers you voided. Vanessa will kill me if I don't fix this. She's in jail. He laughed, a brittle sound. Not for long. Her father's connected. He'll post higher bail by dawn. Footsteps at top of stairs. Monroe's voice. Lorraine? Preston flashed. Panic grabbed pipe wrench on shelf. I fired. Harpoon hissed, skewered his shoulder, pinning him to joist. He howled. Monroe bounded down, cuffed him despite injury. EMTs called. As they hauled Preston up, he spat blood-flecked words. Vanessa has last play. The sea will claim what lawyers can't. A chill deeper than Atlantic swept my bones. Outside, snow thawed under dawn sun. Yet I knew a storm greater than weather brewed. The house stood blood-stained but unbowed. I touched its wall, whispered, "Anchor points matter. Some anchors, though, drag you under." Edna approached, handing me mug. You fought them all, Rainey. Rest. I nodded, stepping onto porch to watch patrol cars depart with Preston. As taillights vanished, phone buzzed new message, a video, drone footage of my house at high tide, timestamped tomorrow 2:15 p.m., with audio overlay of Vanessa's voice. See how pretty it'll look beneath the waves? I looked at cliff edge, at the sea lapping hungrily. Erosion. Dynamite? She planned to drop the bluff. A siren wailed distant, maybe ambulance, maybe omen. The wind shifted, carrying scent of salt and sulfur, and I realized tomorrow's battle would not be fought in courtrooms or bedrooms, but at the very foundation of land itself. I tightened robe around shoulders, eyes fixed on horizon where dark clouds gathered like a fleet. The war was not over. It had merely changed tide. The next morning broke under a sky the color of dull pewter, clouds pressed so low they felt like a lid sealing in dread. I stood on the cliff's precipice, breath fogging white, studying the rock face where Vanessa's threat now pulsed louder than the surf. Dynamite. Nothing else would dislodge 300 tons of schist into the Atlantic at 2:15 p.m. High tide, when the sea's appetite was broadest. Deputy Monroe's assessment matched mine. If she's got explosives, we'll find them, he promised over the crackle of his radio. State Bomb Squad was en route. So were coastal geologists to gauge risk. But time bled fast. Inside, Hannah drafted emergency restraining petitions. While Valerie scoured darknet chatter, Earl fortified basement joists with timber braces, muttering prayers between hammer blows. Edna kept coffee flowing, though her hands shook so badly she spilled more than she served. By 10 a.m., the bomb-sniffing dog had found nothing on property. But Monroe discovered fresh drill holes at cliff edge less than 2 inches in diameter, ideal for shaped charges. Whoever did it worked overnight, silent as guilt, quick as panic. The question twisted my gut. How had they planted charges under police watch? Answer arrived in siren wail. Two cruisers diverted last night to a false 911 call reporting armed standoff 15 miles inland. While half the force chased ghosts, saboteurs drilled rock. Hannah's phone rang. She answered, went pale. She put on speaker. Vanessa's voice, syrup over razor blades. Tick-tock, Lorraine. At high tide, the sea collects debts. Call ended. I inhaled till lungs ached. Gulls wheeled overhead, screeching like prophets. I turned to Monroe. Evacuate my neighbors. He hesitated. Understood. He radioed orders. Neighbors left reluctantly. Vows of solidarity tossed like life preservers. Earl refused to go, standing sentinel with harpoon. Edna, too. I didn't argue. Love won't always yield to reason. By noon, wind rose, foretelling squall. Bomb squad arrived in unmarked van. Lead tech, Ramirez, examined drill holes, inserted, tiny camera. Footage revealed cylindrical charges wired in series, each stamped with corporate logo. Whitaker Maritime Solutions. My husband's defunct company name stolen as taunt. Diffusing required disarming remote detonator they hadn't. Located. Ramirez. If device is within 300 meters, signal blockage possible but not guaranteed. He set jammers, began extraction countdown. I retreated to kitchen where Hannah reviewed deposition schedule. She glanced up. We'll beat her in court. Tomorrow. Only if we have a courtroom left, I said. We shared faint smiles. Valerie burst in. Found something. Vanessa purchased wave trigger detonator from darknet vendor. Device monitors tide pressure. Auto fires if signal lost. Ramirez called from Cliff. We pull wires. Pressure sensor activates. Need manual override. Code. Valerie hacked vendor chat logs. Recovered code string. She relayed. Ramirez input. Green light blinked. Phase 1 safe, but 2 charges remained deeper than camera reached. Ramirez needed drilling rig. Time 1:13 p.m. Tide crest in 62 minutes. While equipment prepped, I brewed tea. Ritual for courage. Steam curled like question marks. Earl sat heavy on stool. Franklin once told me, the sea takes only what we forget to secure. I stared into mug. We won't forget today. Then phone vibrated. Unknown number, video call. Against wisdom, I answered. Vanessa's face filled screen, wind-blown hair, pupils dilated. She stood on the deck of a boat, the sea siren, Grant's childhood dinghy restored last summer. Behind her, shoreline retreated. She headed toward open Atlantic. Lorraine. She sang, You busy? Thought I'd watch the fireworks from the water. Cleaner view. Stop this, she laughed. You never understood stakes. This property funds my child's future. Yours ended years ago. Your child deserves better than blood money. Baby deserves legacy, and I will deliver. Signal cut. I rushed outside, showed Monroe the video. Marine Patrol scrambled boat, but snow squall reduced visibility. 4:45 p.m. Ramirez still drilling. Wind howled, snow pelted sideways. Visibility 50 feet. Earl joined Ramirez, hands steady despite age. Together they extracted second charge. Sweated over last buried deepest. Valerie's jammer shorted. Ear-splitting feedback screeched. Signal spike. She rebooted. Time 2:04, Ramirez shouted. Detonator polling for signal. If it doesn't receive cancel code by 2:15, automatic. Blast! We radioed Coast Guard to triangulate Vanessa's boat. Static reply. Edna clasped my hand. Rainey, we need miracle. I remembered Franklin's tide charts stored in pump house. Pressure calculation might predict algorithm cycle. I sprinted path, retrieved chart, thrust at Valerie. She overlaid data on code pattern, derived alt-cancel string. 10. Ramirez transmitted string. Green indicator blinked, then red. Wrong code. Wind moaned like bereaved whale. Waves crashed, higher each minute. Earl hammered drill, bit shattered. No more extraction. Ramirez set remote cutting torch, sparks hissed. 12. Valerie hacked deeper, cross-referencing vendor forum. Discovered fallback code encoded with buyer's birth date. Vanessa's? Unknown. The baby's due date? 28th May. Code variant. She generated sequence 05282025.214. Ramirez shouted, "Now or never!" Valerie sent new sequence. Silence, then. Indicator went solid green. Ramirez cut last wire. Relief surge, but Tide Peak still pressed sensors. If battery backup independent? Ramirez unsure. He and Earl hauled charges into containment drums. 17 p.m. No blast. Waves lapped harmless. Crisis averted. Almost. Radio crackled. Coast Guard sighted. Sea siren. Adrift. No pilot. Rescue boarding. Vanessa missing. My stomach fell. Monroe guessed. She dove. Perhaps suicide or escape via smaller skiff. Snow eased. We gathered in kitchen. Exhaustion palpable. I prepared soup for crew. As we spooned warmth, Valerie checked live coastal cams. She gasped, pointed. Figure trudging shoreline near Grey Gull Estuary, carrying Duffel Monroe dispatched unit. I followed. On foot, adrenaline second wind. Earl tailed wielding harpoon just in case. Estuary marsh sucked boots. Figure stumbled. Vanessa, soaked, hair plastered, lips blue. She saw us, dropped duffel, fell to knees. I approached warily. Tears streamed. "Why, Vanessa?" she sobbed. "I ruined everything. My father, debts. I needed house sale to pay. Franklin's life insurance dormant until property transfers. You wouldn't die, so I tried forcing sale. I never meant—" She glanced at duffel. Inside, unspent C4 Monroe. Cuffed her, read rights. She offered no fight. Snow resumed, gentle now, blanketing guilt. Back home, dusk settled. Bomb squad removed charges. Engineers deemed cliff stable. Inside, fireplace crackled. Earl snored on couch. Valerie typed formal statement. Edna knit baby cap. For Grant's child, she said, because innocence deserves warmth. Phone buzzed. Grant. He'd heard. He thanked me through sobs. We talked long, about therapy, forgiveness. He would testify, begin anew. I let hope flicker. Midnight. House quiet. I wrote in Franklin's journal. Storm passed. Anchor held. Then I added, "This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe." Now, back to the story. I closed book, placed on mantle. Wind rattled pane, a benign sound once more. I banked. Fire, climbed stairs, pausing to look out window where moon-silvered calm Atlantic. But below, red and blue lights still pulsed where officers processed crime scene. Justice, like tide, moves, relentless. In bed, exhaustion weighted limbs, but sleep distant. I replayed Vanessa's confession. Debts? Whose? Her father, a real estate magnate, rumored mob ties. They might retaliate. A new dread stirred. This? War of land perhaps tangled with darker undertow. As eyelids drooped, text pinged. Debt unpaid. Collection imminent. No number. My tired sigh turned into steely resolve. Dawn's meeting with federal agents would peel layers. Sleep finally embraced me, but dreams roiled. A lighthouse shattering, water rising. I woke before alarm to glow of pre-dawn. Another day of battle, but this time, horizon hinting at justice fully served. Downstairs, newspapers delivered. Front page photo of me hugging Earl beneath cliff headline. Grandmother foils coastal. Bomb plot. I chuckled, sipped coffee. Outside, neighbors returned, waving, cheering. Community net, bright and strong. But among them, a sleek black sedan idled tinted windows. It rolled away when Monroe's cruiser appeared. Collection imminent. The Fight for house now merged with fight against hidden debts. I straightened shoulders, one enemy at a time. Hannah arrived with Federal Task Force lead, Agent Chen, investigating interstate fraud. They briefed. Vanessa's father, Richard Hale, laundered money through North Coast Premier. Vanessa sought property to leverage loans. Preston a key conduit. Bennett muscle, Preston in custody, talking. Vanessa cooperating. They needed my testimony and any of Franklin's old shipping ledgers, apparently documents proving Hale's offshore tax evasion. Franklin chartered for Hale decades ago, unwitting. I searched attic, found waterproof trunk, Franklin's handwriting on label, H cargo manifests. I opened, inside, ledgers, floppy disks, a sealed envelope addressed to Lorraine, open if. Danger. My breath caught. I slit seal. Letter. Franklin suspected Hale smuggling contraband. He kept records in case the sea ever reared its ugly head on our family. Instructions. Give to authorities you trust. I handed envelope to Agent Chen. I trust you, she smiled. This ends here. Mid-afternoon, as agents digitized ledgers, power flickered, grid overload, backup generator kicked. Through window, I saw sedan return, 2 men exit in suits. They approached officers, flashed counterfeit credentials, demanding evidence. Ramirez challenged, suits withdrew, slipped to cliffs. I alerted Chen. Agents pursued, but suits vanished, leaving tire tracks toward highway. Day faded. Federal convoys secured documents for transport at a 600 next dawn. After dinner, community gathered for vigilance vigil, candles forming path along cliff, symbol of light against darkness. Children sang. My heart swelled. Later, alone, I reread Franklin's letter, his final line. Remember, love, a lighthouse's purpose is not to resist the storm, but to guide others through it. I whispered, I'm still guiding. Midnight again. I set kettle, looked upon house, patched holes, new locks, stronger beams, yet its soul unchanged. Harbor. A quiet knock tapped back door. I opened cautiously. Grant stood, eyes earnest. He held ultrasound photo. Thought you should meet your grandchild. Tears blurred image of tiny hand. Healing began. We talked until moon sank. He slept on couch, perhaps penance, perhaps belonging. At 4:03 a.m., motion alarm chirped. Camera showed sedan idling blocks away. I called Monroe. Patrol swept, found nothing. Dawn's first blush tinged sky when convoy rolled, documents secured. I hugged Agent Chen. She promised updates. As vehicles disappeared down road, I exhaled. Relief bigger than ocean. But from cliff edge came strange groan. Rock shifting. Had charges weakened strata? Engineers assured stability, yet fissure widened. I signaled Earl. We cordoned area. Crack echoed like distant thunder. A 6-foot slab sheared off, plunging into surf with geyser roar. Sea swallowed stone. Safety, always provisional. We retreated to house. Inside, phone rang. Chen. We intercepted chatter. Hit planned on evidence transport. Convoy ambushed but repelled. Suspects in sedan fled. Sedan, the one stalking. Hale's reach extended. I thanked her, hung up. Outside window, snowflakes drifted lazy as feathers. Peace, with pulse beneath. Grant poured coffee, eyes determined. Mom, I'm here till this ends. I believed him. We sat at table where years of arguments and reconciliations etched into wood grain. I touched the worn surface, felt heartbeat. Of home. Cliff fracture would require reinforcement, engineers scheduled. Legal battles would drag months. But sun rose, painting kitchen gold, and I realized war does not end with trumpet. It tapers like tide, leaving ripples of vigilance. Yet love stands, weather-beaten perhaps, but rooted. I smiled at Grant. lifted mug. Two anchors and lighthouses. Clinked gently. Outside, gulls cried. Not morning, but welcoming dawn. Part 5 concludes, horizon widening, but the story's currents still beckon. 2 more parts remain, and the sea may yet test every knot I've tied. Morning draped itself over Dory Point like a weary traveler who had slept in her clothes, creased, grim-eyed, but determined to keep moving. The air hummed with a tension so taut I could almost pluck it like violin wire. From the kitchen window, I watched the federal convoy fade into a smear of exhaust up Route 1, Franklin's ledgers locked in steel crates within those tan Suburbans. Part of me felt as though my own bones were being carted away for safekeeping. Grant stood beside me, coffee mug steaming between his palms. The smell was comforting, hazelnut creamer the way he loved as a boy, yet I couldn't shake the memory of those months when every shared sip tasted like betrayal. Today we clung to small normalities because the larger world was fracturing underfoot. Earl rapped on the pantry door, startling us. He'd spent dawn bolting a temporary steel plate across the new fissure in the cliff. "That'll hold a fortnight," he said, wiping sweat with a bandana printed with tiny lobsters. "But we need a proper retaining wall, Rainey." I nodded. Money and time, 2 currencies in scant supply. Earl glanced at Grant, then excused himself to check the basement bracing. Grant spoke first. "Mom, how are you holding up?" "How's the baby?" I countered. He placed his free hand over mine on the windowsill, a tentative truce. "Kicking like he wants to captain a schooner," he said. "Doctor says everything looks good despite everything. Despite your wife's bomb plot, your forged mortgage, the cliff falling into the sea." I let the unspoken list hover between us. Instead, I asked, "Have you eaten?" He shook his head, so I fried eggs while the kettle clicked and hummed. The ordinary motions calmed my pulse, but when the clock struck 8 and Monroe didn't, radio his routine check-in, my spinal cord felt like it pivoted to ice. Edna bustled in, cheeks flushed from the walk over. She carried a grocery sack with fresh oranges. "Vitamin C," she said for shock. "You two look like guests at your own funerals. Eat." She sliced fruit and spoke about storm barriers in New Jersey she'd seen on the news. I half listened, ear-tuned to the police scanner Valerie had set on the counter. Static then. "Unit 23 to base, convoy secure. No contact with Unit 11, possible 1050 on Old Mill Road." Static again. My stomach knotted. Unit 11 was Deputy Monroe's cruiser, Grant. Heard it, too. "Old Mill's north of town." He fetched his coat. "I'm going." "Wait for backup," I said, but he was already out the door. I cursed silently. The scanner crackled again, reports of a black sedan matching our stalker tailing the Phi. Convoy before veering off toward Old Mill. An ambush then. Hale's men. My fractured arm ached, as if bones could sense the fresh fracture of events. Edna placed a stern hand on my shoulder. "Stay here, Rainey. Authorities are on it." Yet every maternal fiber screamed to chase after my son. I tamped the urge beneath logic. Grant was not alone. State police were nearer to Old Mill than me. I would protect the stronghold, not weaken it by leaving. Valerie ran in from the living room, eyes wide. I intercepted chatter on an encrypted channel. "Sounds like they're searching for the widow and the originals." "That's you, Lorraine. The originals might be Franklin's backup ledgers." "Those left yesterday. Maybe they think you kept copies." I had, in fact, scanned the ledgers onto an external drive tucked inside the hollow of an old hymnal on the bookshelf. Only Hannah and I knew. My gaze slid to the shelf. Valerie followed it. She whispered, "We should move it." Later, once Monroe checks in, time warped again. Snow began, fat, soggy flakes that pasted themselves to window panes. Earl emerged from the cellar carrying a makeshift steel rod he'd fashioned into a barricade brace. "Basement secure? For now," he reported. "Any word on the deputy?" I shook my head. Earl frowned at the scanner, then at the snow. Bad driving weather, he muttered. He poured himself coffee and stood guard by the back door. At 9:17, the phone rang, Monroe's number. I snatched receiver. His voice sounded muffled, urgent. Lorraine, roadblock, tire spike strips. Grant's here, okay? Need tow, long. Story, stay inside. Send no one. Units 15 minutes out. Line went dead. Edna whispered, "Thank God they're alive." I exhaled slowly, only to suck in a sharper breath. Faint engine noise outside. Earl peeked through the curtain. "Delivery truck," he said, confused. Big brown panel van backed into the driveway, emblazoned with Harbor Freight Logistics. Snow caked the bumper, obscuring plates. The driver, a woman in bright orange parka, hopped out, carrying an electronic pad. I opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Delivery for Lorraine Whitaker," she said, reading from pad. "Fragile equipment, requires signature." Her eyes never met mine. I hadn't ordered anything. Hannah sometimes shipped legal doc boxes, but she always called first. "From whom?" "Sender listed as H. Maritime. Hail again." My heartbeat stuttered. Earl stood behind me with the harpoon angled subtly. "We didn't order. Leave." She shrugged, returned to van. But instead of leaving, she lifted roll-up door. Inside, 6 large crates strapped to pallet. Red hazard. Stickers. Corrosive. Edna gasped. Earl cursed. I slammed door, bolted it. "Call bomb squad," I ordered Valerie, who was already dialing. The driver climbed back in cab, engine roaring. She gunned forward, aimed at the house like a battering. Rum. Earl yanked me aside as van smashed through porch rail, slamming to a stop against foundation. Alarming thunk echoed inside. Driver jumped out the back, sprinting for cliff path. Edna leveled shotgun but held fire lest she hit innocents beyond. Valerie's voice trembled into phone as she relayed attack. Earl and I approached wreckage cautiously. The crates, ruptured, oozed amber liquid onto porch boards. The smell, acrid, industrial, burned nostrils. "Hydrochloric acid," Earl said, reading a label. "They meant to melt the supports." I staggered. They would corrode foundation faster than dynamite. We retreated inside. Snow blew through. Shattered wall. Cold infiltrating. Earl fetched baking soda sacks from workshop. Neutralizer. We shoveled onto acid puddles, steam rising. While we battled chemical burn, Valerie reported deputies en route, but acid had seeped through wood, sizzling on concrete footings. Earl's face darkened. Structural damage. Outside, sirens approached. Snow thickened, muffling sound. The driver was gone, leaving footprints to cliff path. Patrol would track. Inside chaos, Grant stumbled through front door, Monroe supporting him. His coat soaked with slush, eyes wild. He saw the wreckage. "What happened?" Another assault. I hurried to him. He clutched my hands, shaking. "They tried ramming ambulance off-road earlier. Hale's men." Monroe eyed the acid crates. Jesus. He radioed for hazmat. Grant's gaze roamed house. "Where's the baby cap Edna knitted?" he asked, abruptly emotional. She produced it from her pocket, placed in his trembling hand. Hazmat team arrived, sealed porch. Engineers declared immediate. Evacuation necessary until acid confirmed neutralized. A cold dread. Leaving home again. Monroe offered station safe room. Earl insisted we use his fishing warehouse on docks. Sturdy steel frame, space, heaters, close-knit locals. By noon, snowstorm intensified. We loaded necessities. I grabbed the hymnal with drive. As I closed bedroom door, a creak. I turned. Room empty, but bed quilt rumpled differently. Someone had been here. I glanced at wardrobe mirror. Along its edge, fresh fingerprint smears. My pulse raced. While acid diversion occupied us, another intruder searched upstairs. I flung closet open. Nothing. Under bed, nothing. But on dresser, Franklin's journal lay open to entry about H cargo manifests. Original pages torn out. Whoever snuck in knew exactly what to steal. I pressed fingers to fresh wound on brow where stitches tugged. They have the manifests, I muttered. Valerie, entering with a box, froze. But we scanned them. Copies. Aren't originals. Evidence chain weakened. We hadn't time to lament. Evacuation pushed forward. Earl drove us in convoy through whiteout to his docks. The warehouse smelled of rope and diesel, heat from space heaters spreading slowly. Neighbors delivered blankets, chowder pots, community net again. But my heart felt like a net full of holes. Hannah arrived, hair damp with snow, fury sparking eyes. She'd learned originals stolen. Judge can still accept scans, but defense? We'll claim tampering. We'll retrieve them, Grant vowed. From Hale's vault? She scoffed. We need plan. Agent Chen phoned. Convoy attacked, but evidence secure. One officer injured. Hale suspects. Warrants in motion, but traction slow. I informed her about acid van and stolen manifests. She cursed softly, promised to expedite federal marshals for our protection. Snow still fell. Afternoon light dim. Earls. Crew reinforced warehouse doors. Valerie set up CCTV using spare GoPros. Edna ladled chowder, humming hymns to slow her racing heart. Grant and I sat on crate of buoys. Mom, he said, this ends with Hale behind bars. I want to help. You already are, I said. He shook head. I mean, deeper. I know, where he keeps sensitive files. Vanessa mentioned North Point Lodge, a coastal retreat with underground safe. I can get in. He trusts me as family. My chest tightened. It's dangerous. He won't suspect I turned. Hannah listened, weighing strategy. A covert evidence retrieval could seal case, but we'd need federal coordination. Grant insisted he go alone. I refused. In end, plan formed. Grant would lure Hale to public place. Meanwhile, marshals execute warrant on Lodge. We provide intel blueprint. Time critical. Hale may flee country. Ice storm forecast to ground flights. Window tonight. Agent Chen arrived with 2 marshals, maps. North Point Lodge sat 3 hours north along rugged coast, accessible by private road and seaplane dock. Storm. Surge could cut access by dawn. Operation Midnight. Hannah, Chen, marshals, Grant huddled over charts. I watched, feeling like thread binding disparate cloth squares into quilt, and praying quilt held. Edna pressed hot mug into my hands. They'll stop him, Rainey, I managed smile. The sea's test isn't over. Snow beat against corrugated. Walls, warehouse groaning. Earl checked windows. Storms rising early. Chen announced departure. 2 SUVs, unmarked, leaving within hour. She suggested I remain under martial guard. But resolve crystallized. Those manifests are my family's. Standing. I'm going. Arguments flew. I stood firm. They relented under stipulation I'd stay in vehicle at Lodge perimeter. Valerie insisted to come to monitor comms. She won. Equipment expertise. Earl and Edna would guard warehouse local deputies. Dusk smudged daylight. We donned heavy coats. Bulletproof vests courtesy of marshals. Grant hugged Edna long, murmured about baby names again. Earl clasped my shoulder. Bring that evidence home. Convoy rolled out, tires crunching fresh snow. Road north serpented through pine forests weighed by ice. Wipers swished rhythmic heartbeats. Grant rode shotgun in lead SUV with Chen. I sat rear with Valerie, laptop glowing blue maps. Storms. Eye darkened. Lightning flickered forked tongues, rare winter phenomenon. Radio chatter static-laden. Halfway, tree limbs fallen blocked lane. Marshals chainsawed path. We reached fork where private road split toward North Point. Gate up ahead. Iron. Camera perched. Grant produced remote Vanessa once used. Gate slid open. Cameras offline. Valerie looped feed remotely. SUVs crept down winding drive, headlights painting ice-slick trunks. Lodge emerged, a cedar and glass fortress perched above cove, lights glowing warm. Music drifted faintly. Classical, Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake. Grant whispered, "Hale loves drama." Chen parked behind hedges. Marshals fanned, SWAT gear ready. Snow muting sound. Grant inhaled, stepped onto path, hands raised to show no weapons. Chen shadowed distance. Front door opened, Hale himself, tall, silver-haired cashmere scarf. He beckoned Grant inside. Valerie piped comms into earbuds. We listened. Hale. Richard, to what do I owe surprise? Grant. Needed advice? Vanessa. Predicament. Hale poured drinks. Ice clinked. Valerie hacked interior cams. Grainy images flickered, revealing large study with fireplace, mounted Marlin, safe behind Art Deco painting. Chen signaled marshals to breach once Hale's biometric. Safe unlocked. Grant steered talk to finances. Hale boasted about diversifying maritime assets, mentioned ledger repository for rainy days. My name used as pun. Ice in my veins. Grant feigned interest, asked to review logs to prepare for audits. Hale, prideful, scanned thumbprint on safe. Door clicked. Marshals stormed in. Shouts, confusion. Hale grabbed pistol from desk. Marshals ordered drop. He fired once. Gunpowder bark echo. Chen tackled him, disarming. Grant unharmed. I flinched inside SUV, hearing through comms. Valerie squeezed my hand. Minutes crawled until Chen radioed. Target apprehended. Evidence secured. Property clear. Relief burst tears. Marshals emerged with document boxes, laptops, my missing manifests in sealed bag. Hale in cuffs, face flushed with rage. When he saw me through SUV window, he sneered. The sea always erodes, Mrs. Whitaker. I met his gaze. And still the lighthouse stands. Storm intensified, but mission done. We convoyed back south, chains on tires clanking. Halfway, bridge drifted by snowdrifts. We crossed gingerly. Ice cracked like pistol shots under weight. Adrenaline resurged. But trucks passed. Back in Dory Point near 3 a.m., deputies saluted. Warehouse warm, Edna napping chair, Earl polishing harpoon. Cheers subdued. Storm outside roared. Chen briefed. Federal indictments by sunrise. Vanessa in protective custody. Bennett, Preston plea deals. Hale facing decades. I exhaled centuries of tension. Grant slumped beside me on crate. It's over. Almost, I said, remembering cracks in cliff, acid damage, legal probate still pending. But the worst tide turned. We shared silent awe as wind rattled roof. Valerie checked phone. News pushes notification. Corrupt tycoon arrested in coastal sting. You're trending, Lorraine. I laughed. A rusty but genuine sound. Edna woke, fussed over soup. Dawn seeped gray through warehouse vents. Snow eased, flakes drifting, like surrender flags. We toasted with thermoses of Earl's blackberry cordial diluted by cocoa. Grant placed ultrasound photo on corkboard between nautical charts. He'll hear tales of his grandmother's house, he said. I swallowed lump. He'll visit it. Safe. Morning news showed convoy footage, my Cliff House silhouette behind caution tape. Reporters dubbed it Widow's Watch. I preferred Whitaker Beacon. Agents planned structural repairs funded by federal victim restitution. Hannah filed to expunge fraudulent mortgage. Judge signed emergency order by noon. I returned briefly. Home with engineer escort. Acid neutralized, porch shored by steel jacks. Interior smelled of vinegar and charred wood. Yet it felt alive, like an old tree after lightning strike. Scarred, but rooting deeper. I climbed stairs to bedroom, found Franklin's journal pages miraculously discarded by thief, stuffed under dresser. Originals still mine. I slipped them back, heart swaddled in gratitude. Downstairs, I brewed tea, added honey. Earl in doorway said, "House past its sea trial, Rainey." "Not the last," I replied. But Abigail Chen phoned. Incoming nor'easter tomorrow night could trigger landslide on weakened cliff. Evacuation again recommended. Engineers rush ordering seawall gabions. I closed eyes. Another storm, but natural this time. I could brace for that. Evening set in warehouse again. Our war room turned community hall. Locals brought guitars, sang sea shanties. Children danced around crates. The terror of prior nights receded into story already reshaping, as legend. Grant read aloud baby name list. Edna critiqued. Earl carved miniature lighthouse from driftwood and presented to me. I traced its ridges, feeling symbol echo Franklin's words. Later, sitting alone on dock, I gazed at harbor lights shimmering on black water. Memory of Vanessa, shackled, broken, hovered. I felt sorrow, not triumph. She was someone's child. Turned desperate. I whispered prayer for her unborn. Footsteps, Grant again. He sat beside me, offered flask of cocoa. "Mom, can you forgive me?" Forgiveness is a tide, I thought. It ebbs, then surges. "I already started," I said. "He," cried softly. I held him with unbroken arm. Stars emerged between shredded clouds, a celestial truce. We returned inside where warmth embraced. Community hummed lullabies. I retired to cot wedged between crates, hearing waves lap dock pilings, sleep's edge. Approached when faint click of latch stirred me. Warehouse side door. My pulse spiked. I rose, grabbing flashlight. Door hung ajar, snow swirling in. Eddie, Earl's deckhand, smoked outside earlier, maybe careless. I stepped out, beams slicing dark. At pier's end, shadow moved, too tall for Eddie. It carried something. I advanced slowly, harpoon borrowed from wall. Voice drifted, a rasp unlike any I'd heard. Whitaker beacon, must be extinguished, flashlight. Illuminated figure, man in wetsuit, face concealed by diving mask, clutching large duffel. He yanked cord. Small motor whined, compressor fueling something. Realization skewered me. Diver planned to prime underwater charges beneath dock, tearing our shelter. I shouted. He bolted, dropping duffel. I lunged, harpoon ready, but misstepped on icy plank. Feet skated, body tumbled toward black water. I grabbed railing with fractured arm. Pain electric. Harpoon skittered into sea. Diver vanished into waves. I pulled myself up, trembling. Inside duffel, plastic explosive bricks, timers set for dawn high tide. Wind howled, warehouse doors banged. Earl and marshals rushed out, helped haul bag inside. Dive team alerted, searchlight swept harbor. But diver lost in dark. Agents deduced. Hale hired backup cell to destroy evidence again. Unaware raid succeeded. Or revenge. We disarmed explosives. Chen ordered round-the-clock patrol plus Coast Guard cutters. As adrenaline faded, arm throbbed. Doctor resplinted. I lay on cot, heart-drumming lullaby of vigilance. Outside, tide lapped. Perpetual and patient. The sea never willingly cedes a fight. It simply changes tactics. Yet the lighthouse remains. I closed eyes, murmured, "One more night." The storm would hit tomorrow, and with it, the final test of whether Whitaker Beacon could outshine both human malice and nature's wrath. I woke into pitch black, not from lack of light but from the absence of power. Every filament, every LED choked silent by the gathering nor'easter. The warehouse's corrugated walls boomed under fists of wind, each strike a herald of the day that would decide whether the Whitaker Beacon became a ruin or a resurrection. My watch told me it was 4:27 a.m. Outside, the tide swished beneath dock planks, higher than usual, greedy. I rose carefully, splinted arm close to ribs, boots crunching salt-sprayed sawdust. Around me, neighbors slumbered in cots and on piles of life jackets, the space heaters dead since the outage. Earl sat near the boat shed door, lantern light, haloing his beard as he whittled some unknown shape. Calm in chaos, a lighthouse in flesh. Wind shifted due east, he murmured without looking up. Storm'll peak by noon. Coast Guard says 14-foot surge at high tide. That'll bite the cliff, I answered. How's patrol? Chen's marshal's still outside, but radio's cutting bad. Generator fuel's low. We should move inland if the power stays out. I shook my head. Too late. Road'll drift shut. And the house, if it stands this, it stands forever. He didn't argue. Arguments were luxuries we'd spent. I stepped onto the dock to gauge the sea. Needles of sleet stabbed cheeks. Waves crashed against pilings with rabid insistence. The diving mask attacker from last night could still lurk beneath, but Coast Guard cutters swept beneath beams with floodlights, engine throbs fighting gale. Grant found me there, wrapping his parka tighter around my shoulders than his own. You should sleep. I will when rock and water sign the ceasefire. He stared at the seething horizon, eyes reflecting lightning veins. I never realized how alive the ocean is until it turned on us. It didn't turn, love. We just stopped listening to its warnings. By dawn, gale force gusts battered. Dory Point at 60 knots. Abigail Chen convened us around a battery lantern, map spread across fish cleaning table. Engineers radioed, gabion baskets en route on flatbed but stuck behind downed lines. Without them, the cliff would slump if waves undercut any further. Erosion modeling suggested a 15-foot scarp could shear away, claiming half the foundation, and the acid-weakened posts would fail. Best option, Chen said, is to siphon pressure channels, dig trenches so runoff won't saturate soil. But we need bodies. Dozens volunteered. Dockhands, diner cooks, even visiting college kids who'd come to sled the storm. Community Net tightened into work crew. Earl commandeered a backhoe. Grant organized shovel brigades. I felt guilt standing idle, so I grabbed a spade despite protests. We caravanned via skiffs to bypass flooded road, ferrying men, women, bundles of equipment back to my property, which, under snow and fracturing dawn, looked like a besieged cathedral. The steel jacks on the porch glinted frost, acid burn marks black as war paint. Yet above it all, the little candle lantern I'd left in the upstairs window still flickered, visible through battered glass, a stubborn ember saying, "We are not." Gone yet. Shovels bit earth before sunrise fully broke. We sliced trenches parallel to cliff lip, channeling sheets of meltwater away from the peril zone. Rain mixed with sleet, mud sucked at boots. Earl's backhoe groaned as it scooped gullets, out of lawn I'd once manicured for lupines. Each load dumped downhill to reinforce a temporary berm. By 10 o'clock, my coat weighed like lead, shoulders screaming. Lightning hit offshore, thunder rattling window panes in their frames. Marshals rotated watch for any human threats, though. Mother Nature roared loudest. Edna and Valerie operated a field kitchen on the porch, ladling chowder into thermoses, their laughter weirdly bright between gusts. Valerie had hacked a portable cell repeater, pinging intermittent updates to Chen's command vehicle. Last she told me, Hale's assets frozen. Diver cell likely hired out of Portland Criminal Network, warrants broadcast. Yet anger still stalked, us in the shape of unknowns. Twice we found cut radio lines, someone slicing comm cords along property edge. And around noon, Earl discovered a waterproof duffel wedged in driftwood at the base of cliff. Inside, 2 shaped charges and a timer reading 14-teen. Chi. The signature of last night's diver. Chen ordered bomb squad, but roads impassable. Grant volunteered to rappel down and disarm now. I forbade it. We argued until Earl said, "I've rigged crab pot detonators my whole life. Supervise me from above." Chen consented reluctantly. Earl descended using Franklin's fated climbing. Lines, sleet rattling like steel shot. I leaned over Cliff, unbroken hand gripping rope belay even though Marshall's insisted handle. Earl's red hat bobbed 30 feet below on narrow shelf. He knelt by charges, toolkit glinting. Wind howled, rope vibrated. My heart pounded in fractured rhythm. Earl radioed codes up. Valerie relayed wire colors from diver duffel schematics she'd Googled via Stormy Cell at Reedy 1237. He snipped final lead. Display went blank. Cheers drowned quickly by crashing rogue wave that sprayed him head to toe. He climbed back, soaked but grinning, as if he'd harpooned Moby Dick. But victory was fleeting. Engineers radioed. Gabion truck still stuck. No ETA. Then, at 1:05, the siren from Parker Light Station wailed sustained tone, signal of coastal failure. A lookout phoned. A section of headland half a mile east had calved into sea, shockwave rippling trough. Toward our cliff, water was weapon again. "Everyone off porch," I shouted. Crew retreated. Grant grabbed my elbow, shepherding me behind tree line. We watched as a surge hammered base rock. A crack like gunfire and 6 feet of lower bluff sheared. Porch groaned. Floor joists bowed but held due to Earl's steel jack. House shuddered but did not fall. For a moment crowd exhaled as if group diaphragm released. Then smaller fissures spidered across lawn, a creeping tattoo of doom. "Need Gabions now," the lead engineer muttered. Chen's gesture helpless. And that's when I remembered the lobster traps. Hundreds stacked unused in Earl's upper warehouse. Wire mesh, heavy, could serve as impromptu rock cages. I yelled idea. Engineers lit up. Yes, fill traps with stones. Lash with cable, line cliff base as buffer. Without waiting for consensus, volunteers sprinted to skiffs. Earl plowed backhoe to loading ramp. What followed blurred into a ballet of desperation. Men heaving traps onto boats, women filling them with granite riprap from breakwater, teenagers securing lids with zip ties. Skiffs motored to cove below house where Coast Guard lowered winch lines. Marshals suspended by harnesses guided traps against cliff footings, creating artificial armor, all while wind screamed and tide rose. I worked tying mesh until fingers bled in gloves. Grant beside me, we moved like mirror images reversing past. Betrayals. Edna, at helm of a skiff, face set stern as any sea captain. Valerie choreographing deployment via drone feed on drenched tablet. The community moved with a single heartbeat. At 3:22 p.m., high tide peaked. Waves slammed but trap wall. Dissipated force into spray. Lawn cracks paused their march. The house leaned into gusts, yet refused to bow. Chen radioed relief. And then the wind began to fall in pitch, from banshee wail to bass growl. Snow turned to soft flurries. The storm's spine was breaking. We didn't cheer. We sagged, spent hoses after wildfire. Night descended calm, but bruised. Engineers pronounced cliff stable pending rebuild. Power returned to grid. Porch lantern flickered to life like applause. Warehouse evacuees ferried home. I insisted on sleeping in my own bed. Smoke-scented linens. Cracked plaster. Above headboard, Franklin's pipe rack still on dresser. Home. Grant settled in guest room. Earl, Edna across hallway, too edgy to leave. Marshals patrolled property until dawn by order of Chendai. I lay awake listening. Distant breakers, creak of gale-tired beams, but no human malice. My mind unspooled timeline of horrors. Forged mortgage. Midnight realtor. Lobster claws. Acid truck. Bombs. Duffel diver. The unstoppable sea. And yet, porch still beneath, roof still above, heart still beating. Sometime past 2, floorboard outside bedroom groaned. I sat upright. Doorknob turned. Grant peered in, pale, sweat-sheened. "Nightmare," he whispered. I scooted. He sat on edge, grown man but child again after terror. "I dreamed the house was gone and all that remained was your voice calling my name." "It's only a dream," I said, yet tears wet my cheeks. I realized each assault these months had been aimed at erasing not just property, but identity. We had survived extinction. Grant squeezed my hand, left. I slept at last, dreamless. Morning of clear, cold sunlight, sky scrubbed cobalt. Snow glistened like forgiveness. Insurance adjusters arrived, flanked by drones documenting damage. Engineers marked survey stakes for permanent seawall. Federal and state officials posed for press near lobster trap bulwark. Reporters thronged. Somehow, I ended front page again, hair still matted with salt. I obliged interviews, spoke of community resilience, necessity of coastal conservation. I refused to mention Hale by name. Evil thrives on billing. Midday, courthouse called. Vanessa had gone into early labor at county medical ward. Stress-induced, but prognosis good. Grant rushed there. I declined. Too raw. Alone on porch, I gazed. At repaired railing, thinking how new wood sits alongside old, making seam but also bond. Earl joined with coffee. "You know they'll codify your cliff wall into engineering textbooks," he teased. I snorted. "If they pay royalties, I'll repaint kitchen." Valerie arrived, brandishing smartphone. "Baby boy born healthy, 7 pounds. Grant wants to..." FaceTime. I hesitated but nodded. Screen lit with Grant weeping, tiny burrito-wrapped miracle in arms. "Meet Franklin Hale Whitaker," he said. "Middle name temporary until Vanessa consents to change." My tears dripped on phone. "Welcome." "Little light," I whispered. "New generation, new anchor." Weeks passed. House girded with new retaining wall, porch rebuilt with composite decking. Acid-proof, Edna joked. Court hearings advanced. Hale convicted on multiple counts, sentenced 25 years. Vanessa, having testified, received leniency and postpartum treatment program. Grant and baby moved into yellow Victorian. He visited daily to help stain deck. Community resumed rhythms. Diner gossip, church bake sales, lobster traps hauled at dawn. One April afternoon, I hosted naming ceremony by the lighthouse where river meets Atlantic. Franklin clouds parted, sun blessing baby's tuft of hair. Grant announced he'd chosen name Christopher Rockwell Whitaker, Rocky for short. We laughed. The house had earned Rock in family tree. I spoke. "May you carry within you the sturdiness of granite and the give of water, the balance that saves more than it breaks." Seagulls wheeled overhead as if agreeing. Later, in quiet, I opened Franklin's journal, now missing no pages, and inked final entry. "Storms will come, but lighthouses are built from the rubble of prior waves. Today, we stand not because the sea grew gentle, but because we grew wise." I set pen aside, stepped onto porch, baby sleeping on my shoulder. Gulls crying, surf sighing, sun warm. Inside, news anchor on television. Local heroine Lorraine Whitaker partners with State Coastal Trust to promote shoreline resilience. Earl teased about public office. I laughed it off. But when Agent Chen called about congressional hearing on maritime fraud, I agreed to testify. My story could steer national currents. Evening settled rose gold. I rocked baby by the window where lanterns still burned. I whispered to him stories of his great-grandfather, of nets and nor'easters, of how love sometimes looks like standing silent in a kitchen while coffee percolates between two tired people, and sometimes it roars like a storm we refuse to surrender to. Christopher's tiny hand closed around my finger, anchor and sail all at once. The horizon shimmered. The sea, defeated for now, whispered truce. And I believed, deep down, that whatever waves came next, the Whitaker beacon would continue to shine, 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.